Ladies and gentlemen, it's the Big Jiu-Jitsu Show. Don't forget to check out our sponsors, Trap and Roll Soap Company. Use promo code BEEFSQUATCH to get some money off your orders on shirts or soap or whatever you want, man. There's a lot of stuff over there you need to check out. And our other sponsors, Rolls Gear and Tape Armor, and you can find all of our old episodes at djjshow.com. I'm Rob, and Randy and I had Scott Bass on the show, and if you're not familiar with him, he's a local law enforcement officer, and he is opening up his own academy here. He's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, and he was also featured on the Steve Harvey show. He's actually a really awesome person, and we were really excited to have him on the show and talk a little bit about the challenges of opening up an academy and kind of talking about what it's like being, getting beat up until it finally clicks for you in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So I really hope you guys enjoy this episode. And don't forget to go like us and subscribe to us on iTunes. Give us a good rating, good review, and share with your friends. Let them know that you enjoy this podcast. And the more listeners we get, the more crazy guests we can get on the show and keep this crazy boat of the Big Jiu-Jitsu Show sailing on. So hope you guys like this episode. Yeah, legitimately just woke up. I hate night shift. Night shift's terrible.
That's
man.
right. That's right. You are on nights. I got one more week of days, then I go back to nights.
I'm supposed to be on nights tonight, but I took the day off just to do this.
Well, damn, I'm honored, man.
No, I'm kidding.
Oh, shit.
God. Everything got real quiet.
I was like, holy shit, we're not that big of a deal yet, man. But, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining us in the middle of, I guess I'm already feeling guilty right now, the Big Jiu-Jitsu Show. I'm Rob.
I'm Randy.
And today we got special guests. We got black belt opening up his own gym in Wilson, North Carolina, Gustavo Machado gym. Correct, Scott?
Yes, sir.
Yep.
You're correct.
Awesome. We got Mr. Scott Bass on the show. So, Scott, thanks again for coming on and talking with us. And I got some interesting questions, especially after hearing about your background.
I'm ready to answer any of them.
Awesome. So, before we get started, could you give our listeners just a little bit of background on how you got started in martial arts?
Yeah, I'd be glad to. So I originally started boxing. I grew up in the south side of Wilson. I boxed a little bit. Once I entered high school, I started wrestled for about 4 years. And I kind of lost a lot of it after a while. And I entered the U.S. Army in 2001 or 2, and jiu-jitsu was just kind of becoming popular there. Did a little bit of it there. And then once I got out, I just kind of went back to lifting weights and really didn't think about it. And I was at the gym with one of the guys, and he's bopping around the gym talking about being a cage fighter and everything. And I'm like, okay, whatever. And so he's like, yeah, I'm training with these guys, man. I'm going to be a cage fighter. I'm like, okay, well, sure. He goes, why don't you come out? And I was like, no, man, I used to do that stuff. Not interested in it now. Well, I went out, and I was like, yeah, I'd like to try it. And those guys deuced me up. And I kind of just kept doing it. The funny thing about my jiu-jitsu journey was a lot of people, when they walked in the door of an academy, they had some premonition that they were going to do it or wanted to do it or said they'd been needing to do it, and I didn't have that. And honestly, the first 6 or 7 years of my journey, I disliked jiu-jitsu 100%, but I did it because I knew it was really good for me.
Interesting. Was it because you knew that you're eventually going to have to go to the ground, or what was it mainly?
Like I said, I used to do bodybuilding, and I was 260 pounds, and I was like, yeah, this is all I need. And after a couple of months of doing jiu-jitsu with equipment on, I was probably close to 290. And I noticed after a couple of months, I was just going up flights of stairs, no problems. And my flexibility was getting better. And I was like, well, there has to be something to this. I don't like it, but there's something to it. It's kind of like, when you tell a child to eat his vegetables, the kid doesn't like it, but it's really good for him.
Yeah.
And so I kind of proverbially, kept eating my vegetables.
Until eventually, yeah. Until you feel the benefits of it. Yeah, it's kind of crazy how that works out, right?
Oh, 100%.
Amazing.
And I can relate to that part too. The fact that early on I hated jiu-jitsu, because I agree. I think a lot of people have the same story of, they tried it, they got hooked on it, and the rest was history, and they never looked back, so to speak. And for me, it was the same way. I went in there and I fucking hated it. Spent the first year and a half just getting my ass kicked every day by these country-fed Southern motherfuckers down there.
Hey, wait, hold on, damn it. That's me.
Yeah. I was gonna say, man, like you're talking to guys from North Carolina here. It's kind of fucked up, man.
Nothing but love, though. No, hey, I've been in the South officially longer than I lived in the North, I think, or I'm at least approaching that. So I get it.
And honestly, even though I was 260 pounds, it was the same for me, except it was a 6-year-long ass-kicking fest. I mean, those guys were just fucking me up, and, of course, I don't know if anybody's really familiar with my lineage, but, my teacher comes straight from Baja, Brazil, in Rio, and it's a straight smash style. It's like, if you're not ready to kind of pay your dues, you probably won't last long. Yeah. But, for 7 years or 6 years, man, it was just like, man, those guys just beat me like a drum. And then one day, I really don't know how it happened. I just came in and the tides changed, and it's just been that way ever since. And everybody's like, what happened? I'm like, I don't know. It's just like, being plugged into the matrix. I just woke up one day, and the past 6 years, I was like, oh, okay, I get it now.
Your jiu-jitsu balls dropped.
Yeah, apparently.
Wow, that's actually a really interesting analogy there. I think I'm gonna use that from now on. So do you think everybody has that kind of that moment where I guess their jiu-jitsu balls drop or it just clicks for them?
No, and I'll tell you why. Or this is my formulation. So I started with a group of guys in Rocky Mount under Eric Griffin, who is a Gustavo black belt also, and probably about 3 or 4 years ago, I knew that I wanted to really level up. I felt like I had a gift at jiu-jitsu, and it was calling to me. So I made a hard decision to leave that gym and go permanently train under Gustavo. Now, for the past 11 years, what a lot of people don't know is once a month I would drive up to Virginia Beach and train with Gustavo. So I've been knowing the man and training under him for probably 10 or 11 years, but permanently the past, I think, 3. But the thing about it was, once I really started understanding jiu-jitsu, and I've always competed good, but in the classroom I just got beat up all the time. And once that one little thing happened, I took a different take, because I do pretty well at Gustavo's school too, and almost a lot of the schools that I travel to.
Right.
And I'm lucky that, I get to travel. Once a year I go to Brazil. I get to travel to Eastern Europe and train. But, I come across a magic formula. You can't just have a good teacher and expect to be really good at jiu-jitsu. It's a 50-50 formula. You have to have a really great teacher, but you have to become a really great student. So do I think everybody has that one moment where they're going to just flip the switch and say, I understand jiu-jitsu? No. But what I think is you have the ability to flip your own switch and go, let me understand it. Just like Gustavo was teaching a submission one day.
Right.
And we're all looking at it, we're getting the submission, but nobody's landing it. And that's when I failed as a student to realize in the first portion of the class, he's actually teaching that position. Now, the Keisa Katami position was mentioned just a few times, and a lot of focus was put on the submission because that's what we were studying. But as a student, I just overlooked the position. Now, what leads to the submission? It's always the position that we maintain, right?
Right.
So we were all not landing the submission during rolling and or active training, whatever you want to call it. And that's when it hit me. I was like, man, this is why, because we just shit on the position and just went straight for the submissions. And, you got to really cement your position. Once it's solidified, you can really slide into your submissions. And so the whole, do you think everybody has that moment? No. But I think they have the ability to create that moment and flip their own switch. But they have to realize that we're not just showing up for training. We're just not hanging out with the guys. You're entering a curriculum. There's a reason why at the end of 10 years or you get your black belt, they call you a professor, right? That means you're in a school. That means you're in a school. And if you'll take that stance and go, you know what, I'm actually in a school, I'm going to graduate it one day, I have to take really good notes. You can flip your own switch. And again, it just comes down to being a really great student. And I think that says the first 6 years I was probably being a shitty student.
Well, and I think that you're onto something there too, because I think when you look at people that go online and constantly resort to YouTube, and people make fun of them in the jiu-jitsu community about being technique collectors, I think that's the reason why for some people watching videos and DVD instructionals and stuff help, but for others it doesn't, because it's how you view that footage. Are you just mindlessly looking for a bunch of submissions to collect, or are you looking into techniques and positions that maybe you have an affinity for and you want to understand on a deeper level? And so you watch these videos and you pick up things that will fit into your game specifically, and then you incorporate those. That's a different approach versus just watching videos and just trying to emulate and copy whatever these people are doing on YouTube.
Well, and, you know, that could come down to the type of learning that people are. You know, you got audible listeners, you've got people who have to touch it to be able to create it. So if you're one of these people that have to be a hands-on person and you're collecting stuff off the YouTube and you don't know the style of learning that you're under, then of course you're going to fail.
Right.
That is kind of interesting because, you know, I've always had this thought of was just kind of like one day it's going to click. And I've said that too, where you're going to be rolling and then all of a sudden everything just works for whatever reason. But when you started talking about like the position and the submission, I kind of thought back to like white belt days. And I'm going to admit this, and hopefully Neil isn't listening, but he would show a move and I would think of like all the crazy applications for it. And then he's like, okay, ready, go. And I'm like, oh fuck. Like I'll try it, and then hopefully like my partner kind of remembered it and kind of muddled my way through it. Dude, I was a terrible student in the beginning. Like I'm not gonna lie about that either. But I kind of figured it was just like, oh yeah, maybe I was paying more attention, like you're talking about, or taking better notes or stuff like that. Not that it just all of a sudden getting it beat into me, kind of just showed up one day, and then I was able to do all these moves.
Yeah, 100%. It's one of those things where, you know, just like I go back to class, pretty much until I got my first stripe on my purple belt in class, guys just terrorized me. It didn't matter if they were 100 pounds, they were 280 pounds. I just got beat up. I couldn't formulate what to do and understand. And then, like I said, one day for me it clicked, but I think I realized looking back now, it's not really just clicking, it's becoming a good student and sitting there and not just looking at the movement, but how the movement's applied, and like, why does an elbow put here is to stop a hip from going forward, or, you know, whatnot. Just really looking at the whole dynamics of what you're learning, not just the movement itself.
And the hard part too is that as a teacher, that, you know, looking at it from that perspective matters as well, because you've got to be able to give the right detail, the right information to the right people at the right time. And so I feel like
Oh, go ahead. No,
I would say I feel like with the instructors, you know, different style instructors, you know, for example, I look at my current instructor, Brad Acosta, the way he provides information. He'll teach it the first run through at a very basic level. And then those basic, the white belt, blue belt students kind of catch it from that angle. And then he'll go into it a second and third time with a little bit more detail. And then what he'll do is he'll walk around to specific groups of higher belts and kind of sprinkle some salt in there. You know, like he'll go around and say, hey, this is, you know, you've been around for a bit, you've seen this position before, here's something else you can look for, or another detail that might help you out. And I like that approach versus, and it's just different teaching styles. You've got Jeff Baum, who's a third-degree black belt and has been around for years. He's like one of the OGs in this area, who is so good at jiu-jitsu and teaching that he makes it seem like he's just effortlessly providing this information and just only teaches what needs to be known, and then we'll come around additionally and provide some extra detail. So I think when you look at instructor styles, you know, I think that's an important note for teachers, me being one as well, and coaching with the law enforcement officers, you too, and that you just have to know how to provide that information in a way that different levels can receive what they need to know about it, you know?
Well, and I agree 100% with you, especially on the teaching part, but it's also helped me as a competitor. And that's why I try to maintain a very traditionalist mind style. Even though I'm what's considered a bigger guy, I like the invert, I like the new style games, I rim bolo. But, you know, I try to go back to how things were originally were. That's one of the reasons why I started traveling to Brazil more than once is because I want to say specifically, well, this is how I've gotten my information, and it's come directly from the sources they say. But really knowing your information, just like I would say, I hate to say it like this because it sounds cocky, but I'm known for the baseball choke. Gave 100 guys NyQuil. I just, I've developed just a really good play off of this choke. So a lot of people would just start screaming, "Hey, don't move, or he's going to baseball choke," and damn it, he's out. But you see that, and that's the problem is, we're talking about the choke, but let's go back to the main issue of what you just said, being an instructor in the information. That's not the name of that choke. The name of that choke is a sacrifice choke. And that's really important to know and to pass on to your students and to know yourself as a competitor. Because if you go back to the base root of that choke, sacrifice choke, what does that really mean? It means you're giving up everything in hopes that you'll land this choke, which is, if you land it, it's a high percentage of somebody going to sleep or tapping out. But if you don't land it, it's a high percentage of your whole day getting wrecked. So if you call it a baseball choke, it doesn't imply the seriousness of what can happen if you mess it up. And that's why, like I said, being a traditionalist, even though I like the new style games and I play the new style games, at heart and mindset, I try to stay a traditionalist because I know going back to the base root of everything will help me realize the importance of it. And like I said, you can pass that information on to your students instead of saying, "Hey, this is a baseball choke." You can say, "Hey, look, this is a sacrifice choke, and it's got big rewards if you can land it, and it's got big problems if you don't."
Yeah, I haven't been the victim of your sacrifice choke. I know exactly what you're talking about. But and I think obviously we know now that it's called baseball choke because of the grip, and maybe it helps some people understand the hand positioning of the choke. But I think it's important too, like you said, to point out that detail because it is depending on what position you get it from, you're giving up everything for it. So
I have a question actually. So you talked about you said you got your ass kicked for those 6 years, right? And then you said you got your stripe on your purple belt, and then that's kind of like when you, I guess, started using.
Clicked in one night.
Yeah. So even up to purple belt, how did you deal with getting your ass beat? I guess is the best way to put it. Because I mean, get up to purple belt. Like a lot of people, the immediate goal will be like, let me get my blue belt and see where I go. But then like purple belt's kind of like out there for them. And then, like, just having to get to purple belt and still dealing with, like, fuck, I go to the gym every day and get my ass beat.
It's a compilation of, like, a bunch of things. To actually get there, it's not your instructor. It's your belted buddies, the blue belts or the one belt higher than you or the one belt lower than you that has your back, telling you to keep your head up, come to training tomorrow, it's going to get better. That's how you get to that belt.
Okay.
A couple of the things that, and I really believe that because I had, especially one guy, really, really have my back. I wanted to quit so many days, and he's like, "Dude, I promise, man, it'll get better." And I heard that shit for 6, 7 years, and it didn't get better. But so there was that. Also, I realized. Back to what Randy said earlier about a bunch of big cornbread motherfuckers.
Right.
That's what this room looks like. When I train at Gustavo Machado's in Rocky Mount, I am the smallest black belt there, and I'm 205 pounds. Our next black belt clocks in at like 230. We got one at 240, another one at 240. I think one at like 280. And these are black belts, man. Weighing this, and it's big problems. But they look just like everybody, like just any guy off the street. And I've been in law enforcement at that point probably 4 or 5 years. And I was 260 when I first started. And I was like, man, there ain't nobody going to ever get away from me.
Right.
And, these little guys just deuced me up. And then I was like, oh, my God, there are bigger guys that do this too? And it just made me realize that, we kind of run a bias on people every day. You pass somebody and you judge them, not in a racial way, but everybody judges somebody every day. If you see somebody with a tailored suit, and he's holding a pair of Ferrari keys, you're probably going to judge him and say that guy's rich. So, we always look at the negativity way of how we judge people, but that's what we do, is we judge people on a daily basis. And imagine in my line of work, I come across a black belt that had a really bad day, and he decides, I'm going to take it out on this guy while I'm at work for whatever reason. And I don't ever foresee that happening in our organization,
right,
worldwide. I'm not talking about just the Gustavo family. I'm talking about the whole family of jiu-jitsu. I don't really see our kind as being terrible people. Actually, I see us as kind of the best people in the world. But I just realized the way that I looked at a lot of people. I was like, man, I really need to stay in this. And again, it kind of goes back to what my original things were of, I was 260 pounds, but damn, I'm going up flights of stairs without breathing hard. My flexibility is getting better. I just kind of knew there was something to this. I didn't know if it was the Jedi Force or what, but I knew there was something there that was good for me, and I didn't know what it was. I just knew that I had to stick with it.
So you talk about with law enforcement and stuff, like in your line of work, you're looking at people and you're kind of judging them, and jiu-jitsu kind of took that away. So you were featured in something about helping somebody out, especially.
Yes.
Did you know this one was going to come up?
I did not know it was going to come up, but let's go ahead with this one.
I think it's actually a really good story, because not only does it exemplify like the martial arts themselves, like being a person as a martial art, but also being like a person who's there to help the community, like law enforcement is. So could you kind of tell people how this whole thing started?
Actually, I would like to, because it's funny. Long story short, as we all know what you're referring to, I was on the Steve Harvey show, and everybody thinks that I just kind of met this woman. So that happened. The Steve Harvey show happened, I think, 2 years ago. But
right.
a year and a half before that, it was pouring down rain, and I see this woman walking, kind of out of the city limits into the county, with no umbrella. She just had a little hoodie on. And I'm like, ma'am, can I help you? She's like, I'm going to work. And I'm like, where do you work at? And she tells me. And where she worked at was probably 13 miles away. So she had to walk through a bit of, she had to walk every morning. She walked 13 miles to work one way and then 13 back. And you had to go through a lot of the county to get there. So I'm like, get in the car. I'm going to give you a ride. It's raining. And literally for like a year and a half, I've seen this woman walk into worse weather, snow, ice. Didn't really have a lot. And so, and honestly, we have talked right now more than me and this woman ever have in a year and a half. I would just see her walking, and somehow, I kind of learned a routine, and I would be in the area.
Right.
But, I would just pull over. I was like, hey, get in the car. I'm taking you to work. And she would say, thank you. And we just drove to work, and I drove her to work, and we'd go back to the regular patrol duties. But it kind of hit me like straight up. I had just gotten back from Brazil. I train at Gordo's down in Brazil, which is also located in Baja, which is the same neighborhood Gustavo's from. I just gotten back, and I'm daydreaming about Corvettes, Camaros, all the cool sports cars that are out there that I want. And I see the lady that I pick up. And so I picked her up, and I'm on the way back to taking her to work. We passed a car dealership, and I'm just drooling at these Corvettes. And I look at my rear view mirror, and here this woman is. And I literally instantly, I was like, Scott Bass, you're a piece of shit, dude. I was like, you wake up. Well, first off, you just got back from Brazil. You're living your dream. Your employer gives you a car to take home. You don't have to walk 13 miles. And here you are wanting something that this woman would just kill to have the lifestyle that you got already. So it kind of like weighed on me for a while. Yeah. So the next day I called Walmart, and I was like, look, I've been inside the store a couple of times. You got a beach cruiser. My name's Sergeant Bass. I work for the Nash County Sheriff's Office. If you would donate one of these bikes, we would like to give it to this woman. And what we'll do is we'll take a few pictures and put it on the Facebook page. That way, we can show you helping out the community and, the sheriff's office as a whole, helping out the community, and just a lot of publicity.
Right.
And they were like, "Why don't you come down here in person and prove who you are?" And I was like, "Okay, no problem. I don't blame you." I go down, and I talk to the manager, and the manager's like, "Pick a bike." I was like, "Cool." So I pick out a bike, and I call up the chief deputy, and I'm like, "Hey, can you come pick this bike up?" And the chief's like, "Are you working?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Oh, I didn't know if you were like needing me to pick up your daughter's bike." I was like, No, I wouldn't do that at work." So the chief gets there, and I explain to him the situation. I'm like, "Look, can you call the sheriff up? You and the sheriff take a few pictures with his bike and take it to the lady. I got to go back to patrol." And the chief was like, "Nah, son, you started this ball. You take the picture." And I was like, "Sir, that's not what I'm about. I would like to go back to work." And I was quickly put in my place of either take the picture or I can get probably a shitty assignment. I was like, "Yes, sir." Which honestly, the sheriff and the chief could have took the picture and took a lot of, pats on the back for this, but that shows the type of organization that I work for. And
Right.
These guys are literally putting their guys first. So we took the bike to the lady, took a few pictures, put it on Walmart's website. A few news agencies found out about it, and little clips and rolls here and there, and little interviews. And I was actually asleep in the back of my Jeep in Virginia Beach. I was about to train. I just trained lunchtime at Gustavo's, and I train day and night when I go up there.
Yeah.
So this woman calls me, and she's like, "Hey, is this Scott Bass?" And I'm like, "Yes, it is." And she goes, "Well, I'm such and such with the Steve Harvey show. Would you be interested in coming on board?" And I literally said, "Get the hell out of here," and hung up because I thought it was somebody messing with me. Well, the phone call comes back, and it's like, "Is this Scott?" And I'm like, "Yes." And she's like, "No, really, this is the Steve Harvey show. We want to bring you and the lady out and, interview y'all." And I was like, "Okay." Talked to a few of my guys that I kind of trust. And I was like, "Man, I really don't want to go on national TV with this." And, it's kind of like when you're on national TV, you represent everybody in North Carolina.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm like, man, it's like, I don't want to go out there and make a fool of myself. And, everybody's like, "Oh, that's what North Carolina people are like." But long story short, we went out there, and Steve ended up giving the lady $5,000 and a new car. So
Oh, wow.
It really worked out well. Yeah, it worked out well for her.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's really good, man. Good on you for helping that person out.
And what's
But-
funny too is not really funny, like haha funny, but it's true. And I'm sure Scott can echo this. I mean, obviously he went above and beyond the Call of Duty, no doubt. But officers across the country do this type of thing on a daily basis, and it's good when it gets recognized. But I think that right now in today's culture, it's important for people to know that it might not be to quite that level, and that's why it got the recognition it did and what it deserved. But I mean, every day you see cops getting out of their car to play basketball with some kids on the side of the street, or giving a kid a ride to school, or sitting down and having a conversation with somebody going through a hard time. Like, this stuff that we do all the time in this profession. It's just unfortunate enough that right now the media is up on this, let's bash law enforcement instead of, well, let's actually show what the true face of law enforcement looks like. So
I agree. For years, I mean, I couldn't tell you the stuff I've seen myself, my coworkers just paying out of own pocket, trying to help people. And, like you said, it's always nice to kind of represent the crew, as they say, and they get recognized. But, you're right. Across the board, law enforcement are giving out their own pockets to help people.
Yep.
That is amazing. And we're really fortunate for that. I will. My father was law enforcement while my family was, so I understand like how crazy and difficult it can be. Do you with your training, do you find it a bit easier to handle situations in law enforcement, or does it really not make too much difference?
Honestly, I feel more relaxed with knowing jiu-jitsu the way I do now than just in everyday life. I don't really know how to put it. It's kind of like, it's like carrying your best friend around with you everywhere you go.
Yeah.
If I'm interacting with somebody, I'm not, and I've noticed it, and it goes back to, I guess, being a good student. I've noticed that your hand-eye coordination, and okay, so let's go back to the original process of jiu-jitsu. So I have a guy that's trying to murder me on the mats, right?
Right.
Which means I'm under an extreme amount of pressure, and I have to make really, really quick decisions, and my hand-eye coordination has to be on par with those quick decisions that I'm making. So what that does is, when you're not under a lot of stress, I think people who take jiu-jitsu look at things and process stuff so much faster than everybody else, because we're used to processing a lot of information under an extreme amount of stress. So when I'm talking to somebody, I realize that if anything happens, we're quicker to react and take care of a situation. So I'm able to focus in on what the problem is and try to fix the problem versus going, okay, am I standing at this stance? Is my gun bladed back? Just trying to take everything in as a whole,
Right.
and getting bombarded by that information, when every day we're bombarded by information on the mats. So yeah, I'd say like it really helps you, but I think what it does is it actually calms you down, because especially if you rely on the teachings that you've been taught, and you just process things so much easier and quicker, and it helps you to stay relaxed. So yeah, it helps you not just on the job, but just everyday life.
I think that's a cool perspective I never really looked at, because you're right. It keeps you at a lower level of stress just generally, which actually, ironically, Jocko talked about this on one of his recent podcasts, and it was, again, the same kind of epiphany moment, light bulb moment, where he said, you actually, when you're not going after life aggressively, when you're not just doing what you're supposed to do and getting after it, you're actually more dangerous, especially in law enforcement, especially in a field like law enforcement. And I think what ends up happening is that because of jiu-jitsu, because we're so confident in our ability to handle ourselves, there's not this insecurity factor that makes you overcompensate. There's not this added stress. And so you're able to focus on what you're dealing with in front of you better. And so it actually puts you in a state of awareness that's heightened more so than the average officer who's trying to take in so many different things at once. Mm-hmm. And they're worried. They're not sure if they can handle it if shit hits the fan. What's going to happen? What am I going to do? Can I get to my gun? Can I get to my taser? Instead of, you know what? It's okay. I'm prepared. And even if I end up in a bad position and it sucks for a while, I'm confident in my ability to embrace this suck and get out of it. There's not a position I can't escape. And so I think that's an interesting perspective. I like that.
Especially in law enforcement, notice that I'm not going to say I'm going to win every single fight,
right?
But I'm not going to get hurt in any fight. I know that. And I'm damn sure enough not going to get hurt long enough for my buddies to get there and help me out.
Right.
So,
right.
Like you said, just being able to know that is just a big relax factor. So I agree with you.
So let's hear a little bit about, I know it's been something you've been working toward for a long time, and I was really excited when I saw your post announcing it on Facebook. Tell me a little bit about the journey to, and then also just a little bit about your hopes of and your dreams of, your image of this academy that you're opening up.
You beat me to the question.
I mean, that question is a really wide open field.
Oh yeah.
So, and I'll really expose myself. I'm not going to hide anything. I mean, we'll get to what I really want to talk about in a second. But,
okay.
How did I start? So, probably about when that one stripe came on my purple belt. When I have downtime, I try to entertain myself. I started a work journal, and I was like, I was writing down things that I'd learned lesson wise, not technique wise. It just started out like a silly little something to keep me busy, and just relative information. I was like, if I ever had an academy, this is stuff that I want to remember and teach to my students. If you'll see some hashtags I put up sometimes called "Pass the Movements."
Yeah.
What I'm meaning is my jiu-jitsu now does not revolve around what I'm doing on the mats. It's the understanding of things that are like the talks me and Gustavo have at the table, when we're eating. He'll say some things. I'm like, man, that's some good bread for life. So I just started recording stuff like that. I was like, I want to, pass on this to my students. And after my first trip to Brazil, I was like, man, this is the lifestyle that I want. I want to do this. And then I really realized that the more I did it, I was starting to teach others and become an example. And I was like, man, I like this. I like sharing. You know, I'm generally by nature a very greedy person.
Yeah.
And I noticed that the more I helped people, the better I felt. And I was like, man, I really like this. I'm going to keep chasing it. So it got to the point where I realized, like, man, I don't think like this academy thing is a joke anymore. Like, I think this is what I really want to do. And I like to always go back to my first trip to Brazil. I was always like, you know, that's my dream. That's my dream, to go to Brazil and train in Gordos, you know, where everybody else did once. And so I got a 2-week trip to go train there. And I was competition wise, I was really good. I didn't lose a lot. But
hold on 1 second. Brandy, I can hear you a lot, man.
Sorry, buddy.
That's all right.
Go ahead.
So if I'm getting boring, let me know.
No, you're good.
But competition-wise, I always did extremely well. So I thought that I wasn't that bad at jiu-jitsu.
Right.
And especially, you know, I had a few stripes on my purple belt, and things were just coming together so nice. But my first week of my dream was a nightmare. These guys beat the brakes off of me. And not a little, I mean, like a lot. So after that first week, man, my head was down. I was like, man, I'm just going to take the second week and turn it into a vacation and chill out. And over the weekend, I was like, dude, if you had done that as a blue belt, you wouldn't have made it a purple belt. So I sucked it up and I went back to training. And I turned the tides a little bit in that room. Not a lot, but a little bit. And I realized, I was like, man, you know, my dream was almost my nightmare. And it's the same thing with opening this academy. Is when I realized it was not a dream, it's something I wanted to do, I realized how scary it was.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if you guys are really familiar with Gary Vee. He does a lot of motivational speaking. And I really realized to let go of a lot of safety nets, why there's only a very few amount of people like Bill Gates and Michael Jordan's, because there's so much that you have to let go of and go, you know what, man, I know that I can do this, and start cutting strings and start doing paperwork and just facing things that really intimidate you. And that was actually something I kind of wanted to do, like a little Facebook video live of. You know, I had a guy tell me the other day, he was like, well, I want to sign up, but I'm kind of scared. And I said, well, look at the bright side. We both have something that we're scared of. We both have fear in our life. But let me help you not to be scared on the mats. And I'm going to use what I've learned in jiu-jitsu, which is to keep going forward and keep trying, not to be scared of what I'm facing in opening academy. Because now, you know, with opening academy, I'm doing it with no students on hand right now. I don't know how I'm going to gather students. Am I going to be a really great teacher? Am I going to be able to instruct well enough to keep students? And, you know, there's so many things that you have to worry about. And if you're not worried about those, then I don't think you would really be a great instructor.
So aside from the teaching aspect, you're talking about like the punch in the gut, being scared of that. What are some of the things that happened when you started this process of opening the academy that you didn't really foresee or didn't really think of when you were planning it out?
When you realize jiu-jitsu wise, I'm not a master by no means, but I'm very well versed. And how to teach, you're very well versed. But going into it business wise, you realize that you're like, man, I wish I'd known a little bit more about this, and I wish you're always turning a corner and learning. You're finding out there's a new avenue of, well, damn, there's something over here I got to learn, or okay, this is about taxes. I got to learn a little bit more about this. Okay, right. So where am I going to get gis from? How am I going to get my mat system up? I always had a vision of how I'm going to run it, and what the academy would look like. But like I said, every day you're just, you know, I think the aggravating part, not, you know, every day you're going to come across something that's new. and it's scary. It makes you want to shut down and go, "No, man, I can't do this. I don't want to do this," because it's a large overtaking, to take on. But what's kind of frustrating is like when you got to get your building inspected. Okay, well,
Yeah.
I can't move past this process until the building gets inspected. Just like I can't get power and electric until the building's been inspected by the fire department. And then you got to do some minor construction, and you're like, okay, well, my projected open date is November 1st, which was like 2.5 months. It's not a lot of time, and I think the only thing that's really helping me right now was having those 7 years of vision of how would I want to run an academy, how am I going to do things, and slowly gathering information. I didn't just get my black belt and say, hey, I'm going to open shop next week. It was something that I had kind of thought of over 7 years of like, okay, well, how am I going to do it? How's it going to look? I always knew that if I opened an academy, I wanted to go back to my hometown because, to my knowledge, there's been a couple of grappling clubs, but there's never been an official jiu-jitsu academy.
Right.
And I wanted to bring it back to that place where, one, there's I'm not going to step on anybody's toes, because that's the one thing, man, that I really want to always be known is I want to be respectful of everybody else, not just in our sport of jiu-jitsu, but any other martial arts studio. We use them as reference a lot, I think. Hey, look, if you want a black belt in 3 years, go down the street. But, you've got to realize that it is an art style. I'm not trashing them as far as actual their art style. So I just, I went to Wilson because it's my hometown. There's no competition there, but at the same time, you just don't want to open up next door to somebody who's already got a jiu-jitsu academy, and just kind of. I just didn't want to be disrespectful because the one thing that I'm noticing in jiu-jitsu is everybody really wants to be relevant, and I think it's natural to want to be relevant, to want to matter, but when you're chasing that so hard, you stop looking at the curriculum that got you where you're at. And so a lot of, like with one of the things, as far as the business and even the black belt itself goes, I cut ties with so many friends, and I didn't cut ties with them. I stopped hanging out with them because I had to work on my craft.
Yeah.
And it's the same with the business. You got to give up a lot. And if you're chasing stardom, if you're chasing, I want my name out, you're not looking and focusing on your craft. You're not focusing on your business. I can tell you for the past 7 years, there wasn't a day that I didn't wake up and didn't think about something with jiu-jitsu or how the business would run or how I would get things. So it was never on a whole sheet of paper. I had the work journal, but for the past 7 years, there was a plan there. So the thing that helps with how you're going to have everything laid out, how it should look, and how you should run classes. But when it comes down to, what style of system are you going to use for ranking your students? Or you're going to use the Gracie belts, you're going to use the IBJJF belts, and then you got to do research on how that goes on both systems. Right. Or you're going to mix, are you going to mix the belts? So every day, man, there's something little that you're going to learn about, and you're going to go, okay, I can let all these collective little things override me, or I can take a breath, look at them and go, you know what, I'm going to learn a little bit about all these little things over a long period of time, and that's going to make me a master in the business area.
It sounds a lot like kind of the journey through jiu-jitsu, and it comes back 100%. It comes back on what you were talking about earlier with taking a good look at why things work, why you do certain techniques at certain times, or understanding the position that you're in. And you're kind of doing the same thing with the business. Is you have the overall image and vision of where you want to end up, which would be the submission, but you have to put your ducks in a row positionally first. And I guess it's true what they say, the journey of learning in jiu-jitsu literally never ends. There's always some different avenue that you got to explore and understand. So it's pretty cool to hear you going through that.
I can tell you this. If you want to be a star competitor, it's our old saying in jiu-jitsu. It's one of the things I want to bring back. We used to always say like 10,000 hours, or evolve or die. If you want to be a lion, train with lions, right? So, and I try to keep everything within the jiu-jitsu family. But competition-wise or on the mats-wise, if you really want to aspire to be a good competitor, you train with the hardest guys you can find, right?
Yes.
And I kind of said it. I said it on my Facebook Live. You know, in jiu-jitsu, we choose a certain technique to assess a situation to help us out of it. Well, I'm looking at this whole business as a jiu-jitsu technique, and instead of using techniques, I'm not choosing. I'm asking the right people that I feel would help me and know a lot about that area of business. And, you know, it's something you can't do alone. You can't become a master in jiu-jitsu alone. You got to have good training partners, and you cannot aspire in business in a jiu-jitsu academy alone. This is not about you. And I think that kind of goes back to what I think everybody's chasing to be relevant now is, you know, when you do that, you're standing away from your family. With me, I couldn't be nowhere where I'm at without my physical family, my blood family, or my jiu-jitsu family. None of this can be done alone. You will not do anything on your own. You can spearhead things, but you got to have good people guiding you. And that's what I'm doing now, you know, as far as what you guys said, you know, it's not something that I'm learning about every day. Like, you know, the business, where am I going? Matter of fact, let's do mat covers.
All right.
One of the things you might not know about mat covers is, are you going to get one that's fire retardant or not? You know, they got flammable vinyl out there. So you got to make sure that that's going to not be flammable. And that came from, you know, somebody that I knew that had mat covers that just volunteered that information. But, you know,
Right.
you got to find the right people in your life to mentor you, even in, you know, this field. You know, you can say, well, this is my business, damn it. You're right. It can be your business, but you're not going to do it alone.
Where so give a little bit of like where is the gym going to be located, and when are you opening?
Okay, so the gym will be located in Wilson, North Carolina on Airport Boulevard. And projected date, and I like to use the word projected because this is when I would like for it to go.
Yeah.
But, you know, just like, you know, all the little things that are coming along, it could be past it, but I would love to see it open November 1st.
Nice.
We're going to do a soft open. The idea is to do a soft open on November 1st and do like maybe a grand open around the first of the year.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
I just legitimately just pulled up my calendar.
Yeah, because I'm the same boat. I want to come out there. I want to come out there and check it out. So
You see, I'd like to use your podcast as a platform for this too. This is something I'm asking. I cannot, for my mental health, I need guys like you to come out and train with me because I don't want to be getting soft. You know, actually, I turned 39 today.
Hey, happy birthday, man.
I'm getting, appreciate it, but I'm getting to be an old man. But, you know, the students need to see guys training hard. You know, you can't throw white belts out on the mat and go beat them up. Now, you can spoon feed them the mentality of, guys, you are learning how to, whether it's sport jiu-jitsu or martial art, you're learning to fight. And it's going to be hard, but they have to physically see it.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm asking my guys to come, or I call you people like you, my guys, to come out, man, train with me, you know, help me stay sharp, you know, not just by teaching, but, you know, coming out and rolling with me, you know, keeping me honest, because I cannot stand to see, I don't think you should get fat on a school, you know what I'm saying, unless I'm 60 years old and I can't walk no more. You know, you got to be the headstone for your academy. And
right.
I'm not going to let my students see me get fat. That's not acceptable. They shouldn't see me not struggle. You know, and that's the one thing I want. Everything that I do, people should be learning from. Just like they should see me struggle, and that's what I'm doing with the business. Is I'm doing a step-by-step process so you can see what it takes to make this happen. I try to do a post a day if I can, but you know, I want my students to see me struggle. I want my students to see me kind of get beat up, and know that it's okay for that to happen, because I'm coming back in the next day to get better.
I think
I'm sorry,
go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, Rob.
Well, I was going to say, I think that's kind of something I've had to figure out myself with teaching Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and teaching martial arts in general, that, you know, it's okay to lose tournament matches in front of your students. It's okay for you to be like, oh, I can't hit shit today, so and then, you know, not pout and be a bitch about it. But I think it's a really tough and hard lesson you have to learn eventually if you want to really convey how it is to train and what it's like to train, and not give the air of once you do this you'll be unstoppable. But it's always just, like you said, it's always improvement. You're always trying to get in there and be better than you were the day before and just improve. And I think that's a pretty hard pill for a lot of people to swallow, actually.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I mean, and it's true. There's no instructor that owns a school that wants some foreign black belt to come in and beat him up in front of his students. But I think it's really important, if it happens, for the students to see that and to come in the next day and address it. Say, yeah, guys, look, the guy beat me up, but guess what? I'm back in here training, and this is just like life. You know, just because I lost my job today, does that mean I give up? No. Getting beat up by that black belt can equate just to losing your job. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go find a job. I'm going to go and start putting out applications now. And just vice versa. He beat me up yesterday in front of my students, but guess what? We're back in here training so that it doesn't happen again. And,
oh, yeah, I think it's a lesson on how you receive it, too. I mean, you learn, just like anybody else. You know, just because you got a black belt doesn't mean the journey stops there. You still learn. There's always somebody better and bigger. So what do you take from that? And then how do you move forward? If those students see your resilience, then that's a lesson in and of itself. So, and I'm looking forward to you opening. And by the way, I don't think you have any worries about, or at least you shouldn't have any worries about how you're going to be as an instructor. I think you're going to be phenomenal. And just based on what we said in this episode, I mean, the knowledge, the deep level of wisdom that you bring to jiu-jitsu and the passion that you have for it, it's going to carry over your students, and you're going to have one hell of a stable of students, I think, at one point. So,
well, the goal is, honestly, what I would like to see, and what I would like to see is always what happens, but I really hope by the base layer of students, once they become blue belts, I want people going, fuck that, we don't want to go to Wilson to train today. You know, I mean, I would like to have just a little valley of alligators, you know, just my goal, honestly, is by blue belt, purple belt, I want my students beating the crap out of me. And I don't say that with a really big smile because I don't like losing. But, you know, it makes me feel like a winner for people to go, you know what? He's teaching really good technique and his guys are killers. That makes me feel better than winning any match I can get out there.
It's all about the evolution, and I agree with you 100%. Seeing my guys do shit that, because I told them, I was like, I'm trying to make sure you guys don't do the same dumb shit I did when I was your rank.
Yes.
And it works out.
And, you know, that comes back to, you know, what you just said. You're not passing along mistakes, which means your students are going to be better in a shorter amount of time. And that comes back to one thing, though, that I don't think that we can get around is hard training, because that's what makes us different than everybody else. You know, you got guys that just tap other guys out with pressure. You know, you got to learn how to adapt your body to take that.
Yep. Yeah, I agree.
It comes in more than one way. Physical and mental and emotional, all that pressure. So
100%.
So, Scott, we're going to go ahead and wrap up this episode. I really do appreciate you coming on the show. Before we get out,
I appreciate you guys having me.
Oh, anytime, man. Before we get out here, where can everybody find you? And once again, could you plug your academy?
Yeah, that'd be super great. You can find me. I currently train at Virginia Beach, Gustavo Machado's headquarters there, and Rocky Mount, Gustavo Machado, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Rocky Mount. But my academy will be in Wilson, North Carolina. You can look it up on Facebook, Gustavo Machado Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu of Wilson, North Carolina, or you can just go straight to my page, which is Scott Bass. I just go by Scott Bass, and you can type it in. I'm sure if you're in the jiu-jitsu community, we're going to have a few friends related somewhere. And you can friend request me there and then go like the page. I was hoping by the end of the year I could have 400 likes on my page. I think I'm around the corner from that. And again, I can't say this enough. I cannot do this without even guys like you, like plugging me, getting to be liked. You know, of course, you won't sign up at my academy, but if you know somebody that lives nearby, you know, you say, hey, look, I know a guy. I realize that this is not an endeavor done alone, and I can't thank you guys enough. I can't thank anybody listening enough. Even if you don't like my page, thank you. I cannot do this without people listening, liking, talking, coming to train. It's not done alone. And I mean it from the bottom of my heart. You guys, you don't know how much it means to me.
Well, I think, you know, you're right. It's a big family, the jiu-jitsu community, especially North Carolina. I feel like we got one of the best communities around. So you certainly helped me a lot through my jiu-jitsu journey, and We appreciate you and your service, military and law enforcement. So definitely looking forward to hearing about your success with your school, man.
Yes, sir. I appreciate it again. I can't thank you guys enough.
Excellent. Yeah, like I said, man, appreciate it. Randy, you got anything for our friends and listeners before we head out?
No, just check him out. I think he's a phenomenal instructor. He's great to roll with. He's a good training partner. So by all means, if you're in the Wilson area, check him out. Check out his page, his Facebook and gym page, and also don't forget to pop into ours and communicate. So that's all I got.
Nice. So, ladies and gentlemen, this has been another episode of the Big Jiu-Jitsu Show. Don't forget to check out our sponsors, Trap and Roll Soap Company, Tape Armor, and Rolls Gear, and you can find all of our old episodes at bjjshow.com. I'm Rob.
I'm Randy.
And we'll see you guys next time.